How are we doing, everybody? All right, here we go. Sorry to interrupt. Here we go. Going live.
All right, we're live.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Janet Williams, the Mayor of Savage, and I'm serving as the Metropolitan Council Nominating Committee Chair for the District 6 vacancy. Thanks for joining us for the District 6 finalist interviews this evening, either virtually or, well, we're all virtually this evening. We have a cohort of 7 finalists that we will hear from over the course of the evening. Each candidate will get 10 minutes for their interview. This is broken down into 6 minutes to answer 3 questions we sent the finalists in advance and 4 minutes to follow up questions from the nominating committee. There will be a staff member keeping time, and they will give the candidates verbal cues about the time remaining. And here are the 3 questions each candidate will address. Number 1, what policy issue before the council are you most interested in and why? Question 2, please describe the amount of engagement and type of engagement you will commit to as a council member. Question 3, what have you done to advance equity in your district, community, or an organization that you have worked with? The nominating committee will recommend a smaller group of top finalists this week to the governor's office. The governor will make the final decision on who will represent District 6 and the Metropolitan Council. The nominating committees are virtual tonight, and we want to do a quick round of introductions before we get started. So nominating committee members, feel free to unmute, and I will call your names so you can introduce yourself. Ruby? Dave Bartholomew?
Hi.
Dave, did you?
Yeah, hi, I'm trying to get to unmute. Sorry, Dave Bartholomew, I'm the mayor of Circle Pines.
John Choi?
Good evening, everybody. I'm John Choi. I serve as the Ramsey County Attorney and a member of this nominating committee. Nice to be here. I'm the only person here in the council chambers here at the Met Council today.
Oh, okay. Joe Hobart.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Pahua Hoffman. Excited to be here today to be on this nominating committee for District 6.
Andrea?
Good evening, everyone. Andrea Jenkins, Vice President, Minneapolis City Council, returning member of the nominating committee. So our work has been extended.
Randy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Randy, former council member, City of Chaska, former Carver County Commissioner, and I'm representing Carver County in this deliberation on the committee. So,
George? Nikki?
Hi, Nikki Villavicencio here from Maplewood City Council.
Lisa?
Good evening, Lisa Wyke, Washington County Commissioner, District 5, 2021 Chairwoman, and honored to be on the nominating committee.
And Charlie?
Hi, everyone. Charlie Zali, Chair of the Met Council, and thank you all for volunteering for this work and those that are expressing interest in being part of the council. And John, I am so embarrassed. I should at least be at the Met Council chair, so I'm happy that you're keeping the chamber warm.
Okay. Yes, I didn't realize he was there. Okay, let's get started with the interviews. The first interview this evening will be now I gotta find my list. Alex Cicchini, I'm sorry.
Yeah, hi. Actually, you nailed it. It's
Good.
let me know if my time has started. I'll get going.
It started.
Right on. So I'm Alex Cicchini. I am a resident of Minneapolis in the South Uptown neighborhood, so just inside that the District 6 border. I'll give a quick background on myself before I jump into the three questions. A brief professional background, engineering and management experience, touching multiple sectors, including the industrial process, the energy, and the retail and facility operations side of things. Part of that includes public sector experience working through the state of Minnesota across local governments across the state, driving energy programs and financing. I've held public committee and nonprofit board experience, ranging from the Pedestrian Advisory Committee and Capital Long Range Improvement Committee with the City of Minneapolis, and broader regional focus with the Minneapolis Transportation Management Organization, Move Minneapolis, and the Minneapolis Regional Chamber of Commerce, the boards on both. What brings me to the council is deep personal interest and experience in transit, land use, and housing across policy, design, and operations, and specifically how closely tied all of those are to how our region performs from many perspectives, but most importantly to me, racial and economic justice, our impact on climate change, and how our region remains economically competitive. So let me shift into the questions. The first one was which policy issue before the council am I most interested in addressing and why? So maybe continuing some of my comments on what drove me to apply for this district seat. For me, the biggest one is housing and our broader land use planning, which is so critical in my mind. So much of what the council is charged with and the economic and equity outcomes that follow in our region stem from our land use planning due to its intersection with so many other public and private services. Our region's complex housing policies play a direct role in the economic and social integration of our neighborhoods, our cities, and our schools, trends that have unfortunately become more segregated over the past few decades. Housing and land use impact where our jobs are located and how accessible they are to people across the income spectrum. Our regional and city land use policies directly affect housing options and affordability. They can cause friction to both public and market-based organizations and how affordably they can grow a wide range of housing styles, and they impact how we're able to maintain existing affordable options in the marketplace. Housing policy also has direct linkages to the council's own ability to cost efficiently deliver wastewater treatment infrastructure, transit services, and the road and utility investments made by all levels of government. So for me, finally, on the land use and housing planning side of things, our ability to mitigate climate change and also welcome those displaced by it to our region depends on permissive and intentional growth planning across the entire Twin Cities. Our 2050 regional comprehensive planning process is just around the corner. It's imperative from a policy standpoint that we have the right elements to ensure the development across our communities supports the goals that we all share around job access, school access, and housing affordability and security. So with that, I'll move into the second question, which is to describe the amount and type of engagement I'll commit to as a council member. I recognize that this is an appointed seat, but it's also critical to the outcomes of the many cities in our region, not just within the district that I'm hoping for here, but my engagement will focus on ensuring accountability, alignment, and representation across our communities. So what that looks like, what that commitment includes, is direct engagement with elected bodies serving within the district. And from an amount standpoint, that's twice annual engagement with city and county elected officials, and a separate share out at public hearings twice annually as well within the cities and the county. I also believe that many voices have not been reflected by traditional models of engagement at the neighborhood and even city levels. So my engagement commitment includes meeting with and amplifying organizations, prioritizing those representing BIPOC communities at least once annual for the ones that I'm able to meet with. I will regularly join council advisory committees beyond the ones that are directly tied to any of the council committees that I serve, with a focus on gaining critical perspectives outside my space. Final two for me is regular meetings with staff at the council, both on the policy and programming side, as well as within operations, thinking facility and transit, to ensure that the decisions and investments the council makes are well informed. And then the kind of the push engagement, bolstering all this with information through newsletters and other push means, with the specific goal of making the council's action and direction more accessible to neighborhoods and individuals who might not otherwise be aware of or engage with the council.
1 minute.
Final question is addressing what have I done to advance equity in my district community organization. So real quickly, first, I believe that advancing equity is at its most effective when it's done at the structural level, which is why I believe really strongly in the Metropolitan Council's broad responsibilities and mission. I'll give one example given time, but first is my time with the Pedestrian Advisory Committee with the City of Minneapolis, where I led the Policy and Programs Subcommittee. We had a stated goal and objective to advance the speed, ease, and safety of the modes used by groups that have been historically disadvantaged, people with disabilities, people in low-income neighborhoods, and beyond. Through the work to develop our modal hierarchy framework at the time, and then also the Complete Streets policy that was implemented as part of the comprehensive plan, we engaged with community groups, the Advisory Committee on People with Disabilities, and at Open Streets events to get perspective and be able to implement an effective policy.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? Andrea, did you have?
Thank you, Chair Williams. And thank you, Mr. Cecchini. I don't know if I nailed it, but I just had a question. You talked about the Pedestrian Advisory Committee and really targeting efforts towards, I think you framed it as BIPOC communities and people, well, I think you said communities that don't normally get targeted in those conversations. How did you guys and were you effective in reaching communities of color in those conversations?
A couple examples, yeah, we had, as part of our pedestrian advisory meetings, we brought in groups. So there were several community organizations that we brought into the meetings. I mentioned the Minneapolis Committee on People with Disabilities. So that was another one where we brought in. We also did walks in neighborhoods across the city. One focus was on the North Minneapolis Greenway, where we met with neighbors and groups within that walk where we were out in the community. So a couple different actions, right? Being accessible in the space where we were, accessible physically in the community, and then intentionally bringing in other community advisory groups.
Wow, I'm glad to hear that the Pedestrian Advisory Committee is going on walks. Like, that's a great thing.
Anyone else?
Thanks for your answer.
Thank you. Anyone else have a question? Guess not.
All right, well, if nothing else, thank you. I very much appreciate the time.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for applying. Our second candidate is Larry Fonest. Larry?
Good evening.
Welcome.
Little technical difficulty there.
Okay. Well, we've all experienced that. Okay.
Indeed. Well, thank you for the opportunity to speak with the nominating committee this evening. I am Larry Fonest, and my background is primarily in natural resources conservation, and my primary policy issue is environmental sustainability. And I had the pleasure of sitting in on the Met Council's Climate Action Plan meeting last week with Susan Vento. And I found the efforts in terms of the Met Council and its internal operations commendable. In my estimation, given the climate change that we see occurring not only here in Minnesota, but across the world, we have a very large and important task in front of us. And for his part, Governor Walz has indicated his concern and has set up, as you know, a sub-cabinet group to move Minnesota further forward and at a greater speed than we have to date, because we have missed the mark in terms of the 2007 Next Generation Energy Act goals. And I'm very concerned as a citizen and as a community leader about where we are at and where we need to get to. And I would be very passionate about working on this issue, not only in terms of the action plan, which I know is to be concluded in early 22, but this is going to be an ongoing issue and one that is going to demand our full attention. So with that in mind, again, environmental sustainability is my #1 issue. And I would like to draw your attention to my resume and the letters of recommendation in terms of what I have been able to accomplish, both in my professional career at the Department of Natural Resources and on my 8-year stint with the Golden Valley City Council. Moving on to question 2, I chose not to run again for a re-election this past November. And so I will be retiring from the Golden Valley City Council as of December 31st. And I have no other significant commitments going forward. So I will bring my full-time attention and engagement to the District 6 position. I am not a passive member of the council, nor have I ever been a passive member of society. I believe in being engaged, being active, and getting things done. And to that end, I believe with my experience and background and education, that I can make a smooth and speedy transition into the District 6 position. And just in terms of my personal values in working with others, I believe in effective and open communication, collaboration and partnership, inclusion, and personal integrity. I would not be taking this position merely to fill a seat, nor to seek higher office. I am interested in community service and helping our communities realize a better future. And then finally, with regard to diversity, equity, and inclusion, back in 2017, I was the single Golden Valley City Council member to join the Government Alliance on Race and Equity, and spent a year with other elected officials learning about systemic racism and the damage that has been done to our communities. And in conjunction with that, the Golden Valley executive team also participated in a professional cohort. Coming out of that experience, we developed a Golden Valley equity plan to include BIPOC and other underrepresented people, including those with disabilities. We created a welcome statement, an inclusive welcome statement for our community, which is on our website, and we are proud to wave the banner.
1 minute.
We created the Rising Tides Task Force, made up of a citizen group, a very diverse citizen group. They spent 2 years reviewing city operations, including our contracting and RFP processes, eliminating potential biases, our boards and commissions, and the city council to encourage people of color and those underrepresented to run for office, and looking at eliminating barriers in city programs and services. We've hired a DEI manager just this year, and we have initiated a number of programs within our city to address our history in terms of other cultures that have impacted our community. And we've updated our website to include language translation for the majority of folks who live in Minnesota or in Golden Valley, 20% who are people of color.
Thank you. Other questions from the committee? Andrea?
Thank you, Chair Williams. And thank you, Mr. Fonest. I am curious, as you're very well aware, the district is comprised a lot of North Minneapolis and has a lot of challenges there. Just curious as to what kinds of relationships and knowledge of North Minneapolis do you have?
Well, I am aware of the many challenges facing North Minneapolis and have dealt with a number of them, especially through the Botno Blue Line extension. Having met with leaders from that community, I'm aware of the need for effective transportation to move people to jobs and adequate housing for those neighborhoods.
Anyone else?
Thank you.
I just had a question. When you talked about this original program that the Golden Valley City Council was involved in, was that called the GARES program?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else?
Hey, Chair Williams, if I may.
Yes, Charlie.
Mr.
Or who is
Fonest, this is John Choi.
Okay, John, yes.
Mr. Fonest, what you were talking about, congratulations on some of those specific tangible accomplishments as a Golden Valley council member and the work that you've done around equity. I'm wondering, would this be something that I really like the undertaking that you took around the history of Golden Valley, and I think that's an important piece of some of the conversations that I think we need to have in our communities. So would you be trying to advocate for these types of equity strategies? I also like how you were really truly engaging your community, but would you be continuing that as a member of the Met Council?
Yes, to answer your question, I think the idea of diversity, equity, and inclusion is critical to the success of our 7-county area. The time is long behind us that we should have addressed these issues, and equity and inclusion are critical to the success of our communities going forward and to our economic success. We need everybody on board, and we need to make sure that our citizens have adequate housing, that their children have adequate schooling, that they have a job that pays a living wage, and that they have the transportation, whether it's by light rail, bus, or other, to get to work and to be full-fledged members of our society.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And if I may, I just want to have a closing comment, and that's to say that I have years of civic and community engagement. I've been a thought leader and a results-driven member of the council, and I will bring 100% commitment to this position.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next candidate is Michael Herring. Welcome, Michael. You have to mute. You're on mute.
Thank you. Just checking that everyone can hear me. I had to switch to a phone. My computer was giving me low bandwidth signal. I apologize.
Okay.
Good evening. Good evening. I want to first start with saying thank you. Thank you for providing me this opportunity to speak with you this evening as a candidate for District 6 seat to the Metropolitan Council. I'm humbled. I'm truly humbled by being selected as a finalist. And I welcome the opportunity in the next 10 minutes to tell you a little bit about myself and how I'd fit. But before I do, part of my personality is I do like to have a good time, and I like to joke. And one of the first things I saw, Peter Gallagher of MinPost tweeted out the finalist list and when it was released. And one of the first comments from the public on there was, any of them ridden the bus? So I want to answer that and say, yeah, I have ridden a bus. I've used Metro Transit many times. When I moved to Minnesota in 2004, after serving in Iraq in the 101st Airborne, my wife and I lived in Eagan. We had a one-car household, and we often used Metro Transit to get downtown to work. Now let me transition to the actual questions and tell you a little bit about myself. As I said, I'm a veteran of Iraq, or Operation Iraqi Freedom. Moved to Minnesota after resigning my commission as an officer. So I've always been a leader. I then came here and I went to law school, became a lawyer, practiced law for a while, started a commercial real estate company as well. So now I'm going to get into the policy area that interests me the most and why, and that's housing. And there's a reason. And it starts with my mom. It starts with my mom because she raised 3 boys on her own in rural Mississippi, making slightly above the poverty line as a J.C. Penney's clerk. Best housing my mother could provide us was a small trailer in a trailer park in rural Mississippi. So what's developed and what's grown in me as I've matured and aged is a commitment to looking at housing and education and food insecurities. These are very important topics to me. Knowing that roof over your head, that you can afford it, that you can then provide other necessities is important. And so as I read through Thrive MSP 2040 plan, I read the public comments and the amendment to the public report. One thing I gleaned was one little nugget. It was only small, but talking to the school boards, talking to local school boards, education and housing go hand in hand. We can't fix generational poverty. We can't fix that without quality education and quality housing. So we've got to really fix that issue. And I think Met Council is on the way with their MSP 2040 plan. In my 7 years as school board member, we've never had Met Council representative come in and discuss housing projects, and there's been plenty in our area. We need to have more communication between our local governments, whether that be our city councils, our school boards, and with our state leaders on this important topic. As I mentioned, I'm a member of the Robbinsdale School Board currently, but before that, I served as a board member of PRISM, which is an organization meeting basic needs. Again, going back to things I hold true to my life and try to put where I have been lucky and fortunate to give my time and my resources to these organizations. But PRISM started moving to housing assistance through Hennepin County while I was on the board, and I saw the importance, again, of the need for adequate housing. It reminded me again of my childhood, and it was driven, from that small trailer park to where I am now. The need is great in our community. It's only growing. And we know that we have a large disparity gap in the state. In fact, it's one of the largest in the nation. We see that in housing opportunity. We see it in educational opportunity. If I were selected to fill out the seat, the remaining of this term, I would want to begin to coordinate, work with local school districts and local governments and this council to really dig into the affordable housing piece, because we need to also figure out how to bring more affordable housing to our strong performing school districts, especially those strong districts that are already improving the learning gap for our students of color. It's imperative, if we're going to break the cycle of generational poverty, systemic racism, that we start with these basic elements. I'm going to transition here to the next question, but it's actually question 3 because it throws in there to my equity work. So I want to bring my equity work into play now. Equity has been very important to me for quite some time. I want to acknowledge that while I grew up poor, I understand poverty. I have one benefit a lot of my friends have made along the way don't have, and that's my skin color. I want to acknowledge that because it's very important. I'm proud of my role in Robbinsdale, because we started an equity policy. I'm going to read it quickly that equity policy. It says, Robbinsdale defines equity as setting the conditions to the extent possible to assure access and opportunity for all students while eliminating gaps in performance based on race, socio, and economic status and language. We will not tolerate discriminatory practices or policies, and we're committed to a barrier-free learning environment. So if I'm lucky enough to be selected to serve on this body, that's the lens I will look through every policy decision. Finally, my role, how I'll fulfill it, be what I always am, a leader. Been a leader since I was born. Army molded me into a better leader, and as I've grown older, I've become a more compassionate leader. I will be there and do my job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions from the committee?
Quick question, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Mr. Herring, do you have kids in the Robbinsdale schools?
I do have children. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, all righty.
And they do attend school. Unfortunately, and many people don't know this, and I'll answer the question truthfully. My daughter has a IEP and needed some additional services. And I made a very difficult decision a year ago of having to remove her from the Robbinsdale schools.
Thank you for sharing that.
I had to put my child first.
Yeah.
And my family always comes first. So, and let me further answer that question too by saying, I am fortunate enough to have the means to do that. We got to improve education for all, because my mom didn't have that ability, and I know there's moms over where you mentioned the north side.
Mm-hmm.
There's moms over there that I know don't have that ability, and I want that child to be able to get the quality education I had, because that's what got me to where I am. That and a little bit of hard work.
Yeah.
I just really want to acknowledge and thank you for sharing that. Deeply personal.
That's the first time I've ever publicly shared that, because no one's ever asked.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. We appreciate it. Thank you for your time. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a wonderful evening. I thank you again for, I'm humbled, and I will see what happens. And I appreciate it. Thank you.
Our fourth candidate to interview tonight is Thomas Hope.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you and share my thoughts about this position. I'm going to assume that you all have my resume, so I'm not going to spend too much time going through all of that. And I will, in my comments, address the three questions that you've set forth. Let me start by saying that I'm anxious to serve, by the way, on any council committee where I can be helpful to the deliberations of the council. I view this role as one of fully participating in the deliberative process and bringing all the voices of the district to the table, as well as assisting cities and towns throughout the metro area to achieve their aspirations. I understand that we achieve our goals by working with our communities. I have a substantial background, as you know, in government-assisted affordable housing, from siting new scattered site public housing in outlying areas of Minneapolis to planning and completing multi-million-dollar capital improvement programs to working alongside residents to understand and address their everyday needs. Today, I continue to be a supporter of Aon and Common Bond. In fact, I was one of the original board members who hired the current executive director of Aon over 35 years ago when the organization was known as Central Community Housing Trust. I'm especially anxious to support homeownership efforts for low and moderate income persons throughout the metropolitan area and to support those at the local level in their efforts to achieve this. I'm also very interested in assisting with implementing President Biden's infrastructure plan over the next several years, especially as it relates to water sustainability. On these and all policy issues, I would like to create connections between seemingly disconnected activities undertaken by the council. For instance, we could support the water supply and wastewater issues faced by affordable manufactured homes to ensure that the homes continue to be affordable while addressing deferred infrastructure issues. These are the kinds of deferred infrastructure issues that can make an affordable home unaffordable if the homeowner is left on their own. I also have a background in community development, historic preservation, and the performing arts, all of which support the concept of regional competitiveness, an area that compels our focus if we want to develop and retain and attract good-paying jobs for our communities. In an executive capacity, with a nonprofit I founded, we attracted over 500,000 people to downtown Minneapolis annually, created and supported good-paying union jobs, and helped to place Minneapolis on the map as a center of arts and culture. In fact, on more than one occasion, I worked in conjunction with large local employers to help recruit people to work and live in Minneapolis. My point is that regional competitiveness doesn't just happen. It takes focus and effort and an all-hands-on-deck approach. Given my executive background with both a public agency and a large nonprofit, I'm also anxious to lend my support to the management committee. I've overseen public contracting, where we consistently exceeded our WMB goals, by the way, finance, budgeting, and capital improvement planning and implementation, IT, human resources, and labor negotiations, all of which were performed in a highly regulated environment with multiple constituencies whose concerns we work to address. I believe I can understand the regulatory challenges that the council and cities face and be thoughtful and creative in addressing them. And I've successfully worked with others to formulate a plan and lobby Congress for changes in laws that benefited us locally and across the country. My dog might start barking, so if that happens, please, excuse me, to better fulfill our mission when current law did not enable us to serve our constituents. My point is that I understand how to change environments that are not producing the best outcomes. I have reviewed the position description that I was provided for this role and feel I can commit to fulfilling those requirements at a minimum. My general approach is to first solicit information in a meaningful way from communities before we take actions that affect them. I commit to asking, listening, and then acting. I commit to showing up and being transparent. I will follow the science, pay attention to the data, and listen with an open mind to all sides. I will be available to those throughout District 6, including elected and appointed officials and their constituents. I have reported to boards as the lead staff person and have been a board member. I understand this distinction between being an advocate and setting policy based on all the information we gather. I will ask questions in an effort to ensure that we have reached out to those who will be affected by our plans and that we have taken their concerns into consideration. Advancing equity in our communities is not a single act. It is not a check the box activity. To me, it's a sustained view of looking for strategies, for opportunities to raise all boats, looking for the through line, if you will. So to describe an activity or single program that advances equity in our community minimizes the challenges. That said, 30 years ago, I negotiated with the mayor of Minneapolis and the HUD secretary, $100 million settlement. The Met Council was at that time a party to the settlement, and they ended up being the entity that provided the housing choice throughout the metro area for Minneapolis low-income families. As an executive with a nonprofit, I managed the art in storefronts program for my nonprofit, where last year 80% artists from BIPOC communities. My husband and I have been longtime supporters of the Brand Lab, whose mission is to change the face and voice of the marketing industry, hiring and placing diverse individuals and college-level students as paid interns, providing support through industry workshops, experiential skills training, and I can go on, but I'm running out of time. Most recently, I've served as the executive director of the Minneapolis Good Chair Project, where we design, fabricate, and distribute and maintain movable benches around Minneapolis. We've done those across the city, including in our lakes, Powderhorn Park, North Commons, Cleveland Park, and Farview Park. We worked last year with Northside Residents Redevelopment Council to distribute free benches that were originally located on the main floor of the IDS Center and distributed them to residents throughout the north side so that they could have them on their porches and also promote public safety at the same time. With that, I think I'm just about out of time, so stand for questions. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone have any questions? Andrea.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And hello, Mr. Hope, good evening. And we've worked together in many capacities, and so for full transparency. But you mentioned Heritage Park and the Holman decree
Yeah.
and
Yes, I did.
those issues. Well, last night at our budget hearing on the Minneapolis City Council, I had four women, four members of that community, address the council and really talk about how they feel disinvested in Heritage Park. So as the Met Council representative, how would you see really trying to focus resources, attention, et cetera, to Heritage Park?
Sure. If I can ask one more question, what was the nature of their feeling disinvested? Was it that they didn't really choose to live there? Felt they
They
had
talked
no
about they talked about housing, you know, wear and tear of the housing, deferred maintenance on the rental units, access to financing for home buying, which I know it's a mixed use community. And so, you know, they want to have more opportunities for ownership, et cetera. That was kind of the nature of their
Well,
concern.
I just drilling down on the home ownership. I think that is you know a Met Council priority right now is to promote home ownership, and there are funds available to help communities do that. Now, it's not a lot. I think that in the current plan, the council might be thinking of maybe in the coming year 22 homes. It's something like that. It depends, and real estate values are high, so it gets much more expensive. But so making sure that individuals are aware of the opportunity and that the city is engaged in helping connect with the Met Council to make those funds available is really important. I will tell you that I have been dismayed when I have been in Heritage Park, that the maintenance is not what it should be. I understand that there have been issues with the Homeowners Association and the McCormick Barron, and you know, I'm not sure that that's within our purview, but I would certainly do everything I could to bring attention to that and to support the residents in their efforts to get the attention that they desire and deserve.
Thank you.
Okay.
And good luck.
Thank you. I believe the 4 minutes is up. Is that accurate? Or
we have about 30 seconds left.
okay. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Hoke.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Appreciate your time. Okay, now according to our agenda, we're supposed to have a 10-minute break. We're a little bit ahead of schedule here. Do we want to reconvene at 8 o'clock or?
It looks like all the candidates are on. So I don't know if you want to keep going through. One of the candidates might want to do a sound check first.
Sure.
Is there anybody that needs to do a sound check or a video check? Or we can just do it when it's your turn. Yeah, I think if you're okay, I think that maybe we can keep continuing since we're cruising along.
Sure. Okay, then our next candidate is Ann Mavity. Welcome, Ann.
Thank you so much, Chair Williams and committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to talk with you this evening. And I believe I'm going to just start by saying you have my resume, you have my background, my letter, but I think what I can offer as a Met Council member are two things particularly: deep representation and understanding of the whole district and the ability to get to work on day one. So you can see I've served for 11 years as a suburban leader in St. Louis Park. I now live in Minneapolis, and as Mr. Harrington noted on the social media questions, you know, I now live on the Midtown Greenway in a neighborhood that reflects the density that we need to see around our transit stations so that we can be leveraging all these investments. And I live adjacent to the future Lake Street Light Rail Station. So, you know, I'm living the dream, I'm walking the talk, I like to bike to meetings, and I moved here exactly to have that proximity to the light rail stations. So the first question is the policy issue before the council that I'm interested in. So again, you have my resume. I think I have experience across a lot of these program areas, but the top two issues I would say need attention are race equity and climate change action. So on race equity first, I think that if we don't create equitable systems that support all of our residents, these inequities, they fester, they eat away at any technical or programmatic successes, and we need to normalize the conversation and provide staff of the Met Council opportunities to grow in their own understanding of the issues and how it impacts their jobs. And it also means from the Met Council member perch, setting clear policy expectations so that we are asking staff to create goals and benchmarks and transparency throughout the agency on race equity. And it also means ensuring who informs the policy development at the front end matters. And so I take seriously that responsibility to actively outreach and solicit such input. And we'll talk about that a little more in a second. So the second area then is climate change. And, you know, lots of folks are talking about it. It is upon us, and it's impacting all these challenges that we're facing and the urgency at which we need to respond, right? And it impacts all the services and systems that the Met Council implements: housing, transit, parks, sewers, and stormwaters. I mean, certainly sewers and stormwaters, right? They're on the front lines of needing upgrades to function effectively as climate change is putting increasing demands on these really old pipes. And I know in St. Louis Park, Methodist Hospital is in my ward, and when it was breached by flooding from Minnehaha Creek, we had to quickly look at all these strategies and sort of emergency responses, and then invested in remeandering the creek for a more longer term solution. But we can't go from crisis to crisis. It's not cost effective. It's not strategic. So I would hope to bring these strategic lens on all the agency's programs through these dual equity and climate change lens and priority. And you know, while I have deep expertise and policy experience and across a lot of these service areas, I think it's clear that as a state leader in advancing affordable housing and a former nonprofit developer of affordable housing, I certainly have a passion about this and knowledge and expertise. We need to have regional housing policies that support workers, families, everyone for a growing and thriving region. So the second question is about the engagement and the type of engagement. So hopefully in your packets, you have letters of support for my appointment from elected officials, council members, mayors, Hennepin County commissioners from nearly all the communities within District 6. And I think that demonstrates already how I'm going to engage the entire district. I know how important it is for me to proactively stay informed about the issues that are important to all the communities, and also to ensure that I'm keeping those partners informed. In addition, community engagement and listening is absolutely essential. And frankly, I thrive on these opportunities. It's the thing I miss most of not being on the city council is these community engagement, to expand my own thinking and horizons and listen and learn about what's important to people. I would be delighted to do more of that in this role. And I understand what the job requires, right? For 11 years, I was a council member with a full-time job and parenting 2 kids. Now they've flown the coop now, but I know what it requires, and I'm ready to do that. The last question is on advancing equity in the district. So I wanted, or the community or organization, I wanted to just note a couple things. The role of a Met Council member is unique, right? It's at that policy direction level. So driving policies, but then relying on the staff to figure out how to implement them. And I've had that experience in the role of policymaker. So the 3 examples, if I'll get to them, the first is I've helped lead this organizational change when serving on the board of the League of Minnesota Cities. And I was there appointed because I was president of Metro Cities. And we helped drive the adoption of the League's commitment to staffing this Government Alliance on Race Equity, the GARE, which institutionalized race equity training for cities across Minnesota. And then the second area was in St. Louis Park. I took that opportunity to make sure St. Louis Park was the first cohort that participated in this GARE. And as we learned, by the second year, we invested in hiring full-time race equity staff, community organizers, and a coordinator, so that every department of the city was developing benchmarks and outcomes so that we were accountable for that work. And now, as executive director at the Minnesota Housing Partnership, we are starting our 4th year of implementing and embedding race equity into every part of our work. Every department in the board has an equity strategic action plan with goals that we measure and benchmark and hold ourselves accountable to. And I think that's what the Met Council, that's what I would hope that reflects out in the Met Council's work as well.
Thank you. Any questions for Ann?
Hi, Mayor. I have a question for Ann.
Okay.
Hi, Ann. Thank you for applying. I'm glad that you put your name in the mix, and I'm glad to be here with you. I love your enthusiasm to engage the entire district, and we did get your letters from so many people offering their support to you. My question is, what are some communities within the district that you haven't had a chance to engage? And thinking about your phrase, normalize the conversation, like what are some examples of those, maybe with some of those communities that you haven't had a chance to engage right now, and how would you go about doing that?
Yeah, well, I think that as a Met Council member, clearly one of the clear constituencies, there's the cities and the county, right? And in some ways that's a clear path to engagement and understanding what the priorities are. But I think what your question is really getting at is that clearly there are so many other constituencies, so many other interested stakeholders in the services of the Met Council, and especially those folks that have not been well served by so many of the areas in which the Met Council is working, affordable housing and transit. So there's no way we could name all the community groups, but what I would say is that as the Met Council is doing outreach, and I would want to be asking staff to make sure that we are proactively identifying groups, going out to locations, going to public housing, community rooms, right, to gain input, going to art centers and other kinds of places, school board meetings like Mr. Harrington had mentioned, other areas, going to where people are so that we can engage them. It was one of the key lessons we learned in our work on race equity in the city of St. Where people are at, and listen and let them tell us their story in their style and their language and at their pace.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
If not, I'll just conclude in saying, you have so many talented people to choose for this appointment. It's a little humbling. And my parting thought with you is this: if I understand this, there's 1 year left in this appointment, right? And we hope, that there will be another 4 years available. But right now, there's 1 year left in this appointment. And I would just say that, I am ready to get to work. I think my prior experience as a policymaker, in the content expertise along these with transit, even meeting with the FTA administrator in DC, all these things that we've done, and certainly on housing, I can get ready to go on day one. So thank you for your consideration.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for your time. Okay. If we're going to continue on, is John going to move up? John Pashenko?
I am here.
Okay.
Are we ready to go?
I think we're ready.
All right. Well, thank you. And overall, thank you all for the opportunity to speak before you this evening here. When I realized this position was open, it was kind of a surprise because, it just doesn't track when someone leaves. And so I looked at it and I really spent some time on it and decided I would enter into this opportunity. And as you've seen my resume, and and I'll try not to dwell too much on it, but I was a council member, Met Council member years ago. I was a Rudy Perpich appointment, and I enjoyed it. I really, what I love about the Met Council is the breadth, whether it's housing or transportation. And back then, when I was there, it was mostly waste control and running and so watching those little germs eat the garbage and stuff was very interesting to me back then. I don't know why, but so now you have some things that are exciting, and I was part of some of it. The first question is what subject is it? And I would tell you, I got involved early in transit because I was vice chair of the Metropolitan Sports Facility Commission. And if you're coming downtown here, it wraps around then the Metrodome. And so we sat down and we really looked at how this would impact not only the Metrodome, but Elliott Park next door. And then if you move the line down further, I was managing local government affairs for NSP at the time. When I actually provided the testimony before the Minneapolis City Council on why we thought 5th Street was a better choice than 7th Street. And it was all built around what was underground, not what you could see. We lost that battle, by the way, in court, I think it was. And so, and it's following that line here. And I do take the bus into work, and I go to St. Paul on the rail to meetings at the Capitol. So and I live along it in South Minneapolis even now. So that transit's probably the most for me, and it also offers you an opportunity to meet with the community folks. Transit for communities of color, and particularly Latino community, is very, very important. It's getting more important. When you're denying people from getting a driver's license, how do you expect them to come to the jobs downtown? How do you expect, and we're still fighting that battle at the Capitol, is that we need this type of transit. We need this type of transit because, and you tie it into housing, is it because we're not building families housing anymore. I grew up with 3 brothers, 3 sisters. You know, we lived upstairs actually for my grandmother, but you don't see these houses anymore. You know, the 2 bedrooms tops, and maybe a little den that they call a den that you can put a desk in. And so there's a lot of issues there, both in transit and housing, that I've been involved in early in my career. And I don't have it because what you have is mostly corporate, but I started in 1973 as a counselor for convicted felons and helping them get back into the community. Later, I was the first executive director of Centro Cultural Chicano. I was the first founding member of the Hispanic AIDS Coalition when AIDS hit real hard back in the late 80s. And I've also worked in the area of, economic development, which I'm doing even now. And I will mention this, is that, you know, what I believe my strength is, both for working with working in the communities that I do now and working for the Met Council, is I communicate well and I listen well. I'm going to these communities. I've been where people were opposed to the transmission line. I've relicensed the facility. I negotiated the franchise agreement with the city of Minneapolis. And actually, Chair Zelli here will tell you, we fought like hell and got the lighting of the Stone Arch Bridge, which you would think no one would oppose. But when you got to get approvals from the DNR and Hennepin County, the Historical Society, and all these entities, you really have to spend the time understanding their position and our position and where we are. Going into the communities, that's what I do best. And I think that's what I bring to the council. Matter of fact, what I also didn't mention is that I've been in your position. Although I'm a Democrat and I was appointed by Perpich, I was appointed by Pawlenty to choose on the nomination committee for his thing, because I was connected enough to work with both communities. It wasn't about it. What we do at the Met Council and what we're doing at the government, it crosses all lines. And if we keep polarizing what we have now, it's not going to get us anywhere. And so I was actually chosen to sit on the committee. Now, I asked him if I could have a second there. He said, no, you can't make a motion or anything, but you can sit on the committee. So, anyway, so that's what I bring. My time, I'm semi-retired. I'm 68 years old now. I've done a lot of work. And I'm also right now, so I have the time to spend. I have the interest. If you check my attendance record for these places that I'm on,
1 minute.
You'll know that I'm there. Last time, my time as I have it, what I've done in the community right now, as the president of the Latino Chamber of Commerce, we're working on supplier diversity and procurement. We're doing recruitment around that. Right now, the state has $2.2 billion in products and services. The University of Minnesota alone has $400 million. And what we have, and that all goes to the State Department, Department of Administration. You know how many Latino businesses are certified to do all this? 82. And so we are really, and there's a lot of transportation, other committees, and I'm not pointing fingers. I'm willing to roll up the sleeves, and we are the Latino community, to see how are we preparing this entrepreneur opportunities. So that's, I probably said too fast and too much, but I'm open for questions. I think my only thing I'm doing as well as fun is I'm on the national board of Golden Gloves Boxing of America. And so I can handle myself there too. But anyway, so I'm open for questions, and I look forward to hearing from you.
Okay. Anyone have some questions?
Well, I'll ask a question.
Okay. Okay.
John, good to see you again, and glad you mentioned the bridge. But I'm actually got a question about, supply chains, and do you have some expertise to help? Because procurement is one of those things that Met Council struggles with, because there are federal rules, but sometimes the federal rules get in the way. I mean, you actually have to kind of go. Would your experience be helpful in trying to wade through these areas of procurement to get to support those minority-owned businesses that we need to kind of find?
Well, we've done a little bit of work on it recently, and we polled a lot of our members, the small business members, and some were saying, it's just too much. They said, John, I can do the work, but I don't have a back of the house. I can't write up that proposal. And then when I do, I'm not successful. And what the requirement is that under 25,000, you have to be certified by the state. And some of them, like Minneapolis will certify a company that may or may not have citizenship. Well, the state won't. In the state, it's anything over 25,000. And so there and I think that, I don't know if we were there with the Department of Transportation, when, for example, when they took out that cutout on the corner, when you can ride your bike down that cutout, when they bundled those, that made some of our companies able to give them the capacity to do that. And I think that's where we're going to have to just cut up some things. And so if the bulk of the money is going now to under 25, how are we doing that? How are we bringing the people in? And we saw that on Lake Street there, where a lot of these, they didn't own the building. They don't, and now they're starting out from zero. A government contract goes wonders. People want to work. People, this is not, they don't want a grant. They want to be able to compete a year in and year out. I think what we're doing right now is we've got the rules. We're meeting with Department of Administration. If you go to our website, we've had their webinars on our site, but now we need to go deeper. And we, I've worked with Clues and American Indian OIC and Sabathany and Summit Academy on what they're doing. You know what I mean? So I think it takes all of us right now, but the resources are there. We don't pass a big bonding bill without the opportunity to bring everybody along. And that's what we do. So maybe we look at raising it to 50,000, but then anything under 50, we have an easier process to get them ready, to get them the bonding capacity up. So I think there's a lot the Met Council reaches in what you're doing. And I really look forward to working with you on all this. Charlie, I was going to meet you either way on this subject alone, because I've been meeting with the University of Minnesota and the other departments. And this is really important. It's just an opportunity for us. So either way, I'll meet with you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Madam Chair, this is John Choi. I loved listening to you talk, Mr. Pacheco, and maybe I didn't hear it, but what was your top priority or the thing that you're most interested in? I don't know if I heard that.
Well, I think that the subject matter was the transit and following that all the way through, because again, I had early days involved, and I want to stay involved.
Great, thank you.
I thought I heard transit and housing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time and your application. Okay, moving right along, then our next candidate is Aisha Mustafa. I saw you on earlier. There she is. Thank you. Well, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, you want to start with answering your 3 questions?
Yes, I would. Thank you very much. So let me begin by, I guess, answering the 3 questions and then getting around to who I am. The first question is, what policy issue before the council are you most interested in addressing and why? As a Black woman in the community, there is no one issue that we can attack or approach and truly do the work that is necessary when we're talking about equity, inclusion, and supporting the community as a whole. Because when you do the support, you support the least, a person who is suffering at the least or the lowest in the community, then you're able to support the entire community. So with that said, I choose housing and transportation policy plans. They're my areas of interest. I bring the lens of a Black Muslim American woman. I have lived in Crystal, Minnesota as a renter for more than 10 years, and then I recently became a homeowner. So after I became a homeowner, I understand that living as the renter for that time and then trying to get into housing, it was not without adversity due to so many policies, grants, loans, and things that affect low-income families and mostly the BIPOC families and community, which quite often are one and the same. The housing plan particularly that you have, I have looked through the 2040 plan, part 2, part 3, and part 4. I want to say with regard to policies and rules to expand viable housing options. And I've come up with ideas of ways to work collaboratively and innovatively with such programs that already exist, like the Good Neighbor Next Door program, which was created by HUD. That program in itself answers a lot of the social justice issues as well when we're talking about policing. If the police live in the community, which has been proven, like in Newark, New Jersey, where I'm originally from, then we are less likely to have a lot of the concerns that we do have because the community is policing the community at that point. Along with another idea of teacher village, which helps with the schools, right? Keeping or making affordable housing for those who are serving as EAs who are not making a livable wage or something at least sustainable. So then I want to talk about or describe the amount of engagement or what engagement means to me, how much engagement I will be doing. I don't have a set limit. For many who know me, I will do all that is necessary and I will do a lot. I can't say that there is a limit. I would have to say that my amount of attention and time is usually infinite for the most part when it comes to support of and within my community, which I represent with honor as a District 6 representative. I'm open to having conversations with all elected officials and grassroots organizations and their base of constituents within and even outside of District 6 to effectively make necessary change, not limiting to the local officials, and local community members. My work speaks for itself. I am a Robbinsdale Area Schools district employee. My children attend the schools here in the district. I work daily to create, maintain, and support diversity, equity, and inclusion throughout the district with all stakeholders, from students and families to administrators and community organizations like ACER, where I serve as the board chair for the past 4 years and counting. ACER has achieved success annually within the community where we work. We establish relationships, build rapport, and bring our community to the table to provide solid evidence of everything right and wrong within the community of our African and African American communities and constituents. We bring equitable solutions to the everyday problems that plague our communities. This work is done with the zeal and needs to see a positive change of and around the issues of the community that we face regularly. As a Robbinsdale Area School parent, I've enacted social and racial justice personal development within the Interschool Council, which is a group of parents looking to effectively encourage positive change within Robbinsdale Area Schools. I brought ACER Inc. to Robbinsdale Area Schools District to effectively educate parents and administrators about housing and how it impacts our students and families. I facilitate an affinity group of parents for Pan-African students to empower and support their wants and needs as their voices are uplifted and presented throughout the district on various topics, including but not limited to SEL, IEPs, plans, bullying, and volunteerism in our schools. I work to ensure family and community engagement within the 5 sites I work daily, with the goal to create, maintain partnerships between staff, students, and their families. This is the work ethic that I will bring to the Metro Council to be that bridge within the community. I do all of this with a certification in diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace, and an unrelenting work ethic to dedication to the betterment of our community and a love for all people within our community.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Any member have any questions? Andrea?
Hello, Ms. Mustafa. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. And yourself?
Thank you for your presentation and response to the questions. One of the questions that I just learned that has been on Twitter, I suppose, is do any of these candidates ever use public transportation? Do you ever, or have you ever, or what's your sort of association with public transit?
Yes, of course I have. I'm originally from the East Coast, Newark, New Jersey. So I drove and went for years without a car because the public transportation was booming. And then I moved here and I was like, I need a car, which is one thing that I think that we really need to work hard on, because how can people earn a livable wage if they can't get to their jobs, or they're spending majority of their paycheck to get to work, or even purchase cars that they can't afford? I mean, creating even more debt and more of a gap, right? When we're talking about the wealth and intergenerational wealth and even being able to build that. So yes, I have ridden public transportation here as well, and that was why I got a car.
Yeah, no, great response. And yeah, we need to make these systems connect to where people want to go and where people are, you know. Yes. So thank you, great response.
Yep. Great, thank you. Anyone else? Well, thank you for your time and for your application.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And that's the end of all of our interviews tonight. It was great to hear from all the finalists tonight, and it was truly, I think, an incredible cohort of candidates. Thank you for your interest in the positions and for serving your region. I want to say thank you to the nominating committee for your time and dedication to helping the governor and the Metropolitan Council through this process. In case you weren't here for the beginning of the meeting, I just wanted to highlight the next steps again. The nominating committee will recommend a smaller group of top finalists this week to the governor's office. The governor will make the final decision on who will represent District 6 on the Metropolitan Council. So this wraps up our finalist interviews. So have a good night. Thank you.